Hey, how's it going, everyone? In today's project, I'm going to show you how to create a inventory list in the React framework using useState, useEffect, and of course, useRef. So let me just also show you quickly what the application actually does. You can add items by defining their name and their quantity. Now, of course, we're also going to have a bit of a validation here, so we can't just add anything without having anything in our input tag. So we need to add an another name. Let's say we're going to add apples. And if we try to add them, well, that's not enough. We also need to add quantity, so apples, and let's say 10. And now we can add it to the list. Now, after we added it to the list, we can also change. Let's say we mess something up. We actually have 11 apples. So we can change the quantity to 11 and save again. You can also say that the button from add changes to save and then changes back as soon as we edit, as soon as we change the quantity, and now we have 11 apples instead of 10. We can also delete apples, or we can also add multiples. Let's say we're going to add pears or bananas, banana, and we have 27 of them. And there we go. We have now 27 banana. This is an S here. So let's change this, bananas. Okay, and now save. Of course, we can also delete them. So we're going to just click on delete. This is going to prompt us with a confirmation alert. So let's delete it, and let's delete the next one. And we can now start creating the code for this application. So I hope you're excited. If you are, give this video a like, and of course subscribe to the channel if you are not already. So let's get started with the project. Now I'm using Visual Studio Code. I just created an empty folder, dragged and dropped it in here. I'm going to call it code. Now let's open up the terminal by holding Command or Control and tilde, depending on what you are. I'm on a Mac right now, but also using Windows, so don't sweat it. Now please, if you're not already in your folder, cd into your folder. Of course, you can also call it inventory list. I just called it code because I'm doing multiple projects like this, so I don't want to have any kind of confusion. Now let's start installing React. So npx create -react -app, and I'm going to call it inventory -list. Hit enter, and this is going to install React in my folder. And I'm going to speed this up in post-production, so you don't have to wait through the entire process and watch the video from me. Now, in this time, when you're installing React, I would suggest that you go to the link in the description below, and there you will find the CSS, because I'm not going to code the entire CSS for this project. I'm just going to do the React part. So go into the link in the video description, and there you will find the entire blog post for this. And in that blog post, you will also find the CSS specific for this application. Okay, so pause the video now. Go in there. After your React, of course, after your React application is installed, copy the content of the CSS and paste it into your source and into your app CSS here. Okay, now this is already done, so I could just delete what I don't need. This would be the test, the app.test.js, the logo SVG, the report, the setup, and also, that's basically it. I can just delete them. It's going to break the application, but don't worry. I'm just going to delete this part right here. Let's first of all start the application. npm start. So you can see, I need to cd into my project, cd tab, inventory list, enter. Now from here, I can just npm start. Hit enter, and this should start my application on a different port, because the project that I'm showing you right now, I want to have this as a reference, is on a different port. So just hit Y, and it's going to start the application on a different port. Okay, now this is also going to break because we deleted a couple of things. So just delete in your index.js, the report website vitals, and then with React index breakdown, we need all of this. So let's hit save. Let's now move to app.js, and from here we're going to delete the import logo from logo SVG. I'm also going to delete everything that is in the header. You can just click on the left side and delete this right here. Okay, so we only have now our blank function.app. Now go into your app.css and copy in the CSS code, exactly as I told you, that you're going to have in the video description down below. Okay, we can close up our app CSS, we can close up our index.js, and remaining within our app.js file, we can also close up the left side, which is the Explorer, Control B or Command B on a PC. I'm sorry, Command B on a Mac, that is. So let's just type in here. Okay, so instead of this app class, we're going to type in container, hit save, and now let's also just do a h1. Oh, and by the way, if Emmet is not recognized for you, then just go down here where it says JavaScript. If JavaScript stands here, then click on it and search for React, and search TypeScript React, search and select JavaScript React, and now you should see Emmet being recognized. Now let's do a h1 with a class name of title. And let's type in here inventory and list. Okay, and you should see your inventory list appearing on the right side. I also zoomed in a bit, so this would be a different size for you, depending on the screen resolution, of course. Now let's go back to the class and also edit a text of center, and this should now center your text. Okay, so these are predefined classes that you copied in your CSS. So I don't want to use any kind of bootstrap or tailwind CSS, because if they change something up, then also the project will not work. And this is why I'm using, in this case, or in multiple cases also, if you follow along with my course, these are exactly the same classes that I'm using in the course. Okay, now let's move on. Let's actually create the entire UI exactly as we have it here. So we have a title, we have two input tags, and we had this add button. So let's create a form for this. All right, after the title, I'm going to create a form tag. I'm going to give it a class, so .d flex is going to display everything that will be in the form as flex. I'm going to delete the action part because we don't need it, and it's just going to cause confusion. I'm also going to add a style to this, because normally when I'm displaying something as flex, it's not predefined in my classes to add a style that is going to justify the content as center. So justify content, and we're going to justify the content in a string to center. So we're going to have in here a couple of form groups, but I'm not going to use labels. I'm just going to use input tags. So I'm going to create a dot, which is going to create a div with a class of form dash group, and dot because I'm going to add another class with the m-1, which is going to give a all-around margin of 1. In this, I'm going to have an input tag, and that's it for now. Now I'm going to copy this, because this is going to be exactly the same thing as the one below, and I'm going to have two input tags. Now you can see the two input tags are here. So let's click after. You can also delete the type if you wish, so don't have too much code, because the type of text is kind of default for input tags. So if you delete both of them, nothing will happen. Next, click into the first one, the first tag, input tag, and hold down Alt and click into the second one. Let's add to this a placeholder, and we're going to type in here the item as a text, and then we're going to add a style and open and close curly brackets, and again open and close curly brackets, and we're going to pass in here the border of within a string now 1 pixel, solid, and hash, because I'm going to give it now a kind of pinkish color, 76, actually purple color, 7633F9, and there we go. We should have now a purple border. Now let's go out of it, and the first item, back to the placeholder, first item will be item name, and the second one, click in here, will be item quantity. So quantity. Okay, there we go. So we have our two input tags. Now after our second form group, we're going to create here a button tag with a class of .btn and .btn-primary. And as a text, I'm going to pass in, for now, save. I'm going to change this up just in a couple of seconds, because as you saw in a finished project, we can add or save something. And I'm going to also have here the possibility to, depending on a certain state, that this button should have the text of add or it should have the text of save. Okay, now for our list part, we're going to go outside the form, and right after the form, we're going to create a UL, a list, unordered list, with a class of container, and also text dash left, because I want the text to be aligned to the left side. Now I want to limit this container, so I'm going to give this, using style, the style property, a width of only 420. Look at pass in here pixels in a string, or just 420, because this is going to be automatically recognized as pixels. Okay, now just for a bit of dummy text, I'm going to pass in here a list. Whoa, not a. I'm going to pass in here li list item, and I'm just going to have here item name and quantity. Okay, let's move back to our project. There's our item name and quantity, and I'm also going to add to the list item a style of border bottom of 1 pixel, solid, and hash 333. Okay, so we're going to have just a bit of dark border here. Now in our unordered list, we're going to add a list item with a class of dFlex, because all the items will be displayed as flex within here, as you saw in our finished project. If we try to add something here to just a Okay, so these items are displayed as flags. So for our dummy item, we get to add display flags and then space between, dash between, and also another class of mb-1, which is margin button of 1. Now we're not quite done with this. I'm going to also add a style with a border bottom, which I'm going to assign to the value of 1 pixel solid and the color of hash 333. Now let's also type something, some kind of dummy text in here. We're going to have a name and quantity. What am I doing? Close this up. We're going to have a name and quantity. And after our name and quantity, remaining within a li, I'm going to create a div, which is going to hold two buttons. So button, the class of btn and class of btn-sm. And I'm going to multiply this by 2. So I'm going to get 2 buttons. So the first button will be the edit button. Let's type in the text of edit. And the second one just going to have a X, a capital X. And we're going to come back to these buttons a bit later on. We're going to when we're going to add actions to them. Also, the first top button, also the second button will have the btn-danger class to it, which is going to transform it in a red button and signifying that this is going to be the delete button. All right, so now we're done with our UI. Next up, let's bring in useRef, and as soon as the application starts, I want to be focused on the very first input item, input field here. So I'm going to import within curly brackets useRef from React. Okay, now at the top after our app and before our return, I'm going to type in here comment refs, okay, refs, and I'm going to reference both of them. So first things first, I'm going to use a let of item name. I'm going to use here useRef, so just initiate useRef, close it up, and I want to be able to focus on this input tag. So I'm going to assign item name, just copy the item name, go down to your first input where you have your item name, and actually right after the style you can use here ref, and I'm going to assign this to input to item name. Now we're not quite done yet. The only way that we can initiate this code when the application loads is by using useEffect. So let's also bring in useEffect as a hook. Right after useRef, just type in a comma, useEffect. And now after our variable of let name, we're going to useEffect, open and close parentheses, assign to an arrow function. And also I'm going to let it automatically update. So comma and square brackets, and within our curly brackets, we're going to take the input, take the item name dot current, signifying that this is the current one that is focused, and dot type in dot focus and open and close parentheses because this is a property of our current item now. So let's hit save and let's see what happens if we do a reload. Then it should automatically focus. And even if I click in item quantity and refresh the page, it should automatically focus on item name. Okay, now also I'm going to copy this let item name and change this to quantity, because we're going to use this later on when we're going to do a bit of validation for this add. Now it's still saved, but we're going to change to the submission of the form, which is going to add now the item down here. And also let's assign this, then use item quantity to the second input tag. We just copy ref, paste it in here and change item name to quantity. And we're done with this part. Okay, next up, let's start adding items to our item list. So for this, we're going to bring in another hook, which is going to be useState. Now let's start declaring state variables. So I'm going to go up in the top level of my application, and let's start up with a const. And we're going to destructure here items, because this state is going to hold multiple items, and also the setter, which is going to set the new item. So set and items. And we're going to assign this to useState. Let's just initiate it, and I'm going to initiate it with an empty array. So just create here a square brackets, which is going to signify that this state will hold an empty array. So now in order to add a new item to our item list, to our inventory list, we need to submit our form. So for this, we're going to go down to the form when we're returning here the form and add a onSubmit event listener to it. So right here on submit. And we're going to assign this to a function, which is going to then handle the submit. Of course, this is giving us an error because we now need to create this function. So let's move up right after our useEffect and before our return. And let's create here a function that is going to handle the submit. This, of course, is going to take in an event. And first thing that we're going to do is prevent that event's default behavior of submitting the form, which is then going to result in a reload of the page. So prevent event.prevent the default behavior. So prevent default and open and close parenthesis. This is now, if we're trying to submit this, wait a second, the button. Did I create it? Yes, I did. But the button down here, I forgot to add to this. This is not just a regular button. So in order for a button to submit a form, although it is in the form, it's a bit different than having a input tag with the type of submit. We need to add to the button the type of submit. Okay, and now it should submit the form, but because this is now blocked, so if I would comment this out, and this would result in an error, and also just quickly comment out this and click on save, you can see it's refreshing the page trying to submit the form. So I'm going to comment it back in, comment the function back in, hit save, and now if I click on save, it's not going to do anything excepting what I'm going to tell it now to do. Now, right after we prevented our event of submission, we can now create our very first condition. So if the item name dot current, and now from the current, we can now select the value is equal to nothing, so to an empty string, just like it is now, or the item quantity dot current dot value is also equal to nothing, to an empty string. Then we're going to window dot alert a string of add item name and quantity, because we're trying here to prevent the user of adding a empty item. Now else, if this is not true, then the item will be added. So in order to add the item, we're going to set item, use the setter from our state, and we're going to update our items. Basically, we're going to use the spread operator here. So items, because if we have multiple items, then we don't want to replace them, just want to update them. And we're going to update here the item with the new item and the quantity with the new quantity. Now, if you're asking yourself, where are this item and quantity coming from? Well, these are also states. So I'm going to create a state for, let's copy the first state, a state for new item, new and item, and set new item. And also the same thing for quantity. So new quantity, and set new quantity. Just delete this and quantity. And not new items, but new item. So first, let's try our verification. If I click here on save, it's going to ask us to add some kind of name and some kind of quantity. So let's add here a apples and then quantity of 10. And let's hit save. And nothing will happen because we don't have any kind of output. So next up, let's handle our output, which should be here down in our unloaded list. And we can already see that we created here some kind of dummy output. But this is just the way the item should look. The item should actually come from our state here of items. So right now our items are in this state of items. So all that we need to do is copy these items, the state, go down in our list, in our unloaded list, open and close curly brackets, paste in the items, now use the map operator on them. And each time we're going to create a callback function here. We want from our items to return an item and a index. Now when I'm going to return an item, I'm going to take this li and now move it, cut it out and move it into this parenthesis right here. So this is the way the item is going to look. Each time I'm going to return an item, that item will need to have a key, which is going to be the item dot, let's just call it item. You can also assign it to the index. You know what I'm going to use here, index item. Oh no, let's leave it as item. It really doesn't matter. Then down here, instead of name, going to have the item dot name, and instead of quantity, wrap this into curly brackets, we're going to have the item, not name, item, because the item is returning the item itself. And instead of quantity, we're going to have the item dot quantity. And as you can see, we are not getting here any kind of quantities. We're just getting our buttons. Now this is because we are adding empty values to the state. This application is actually conceived in that way that as soon as we add something to our state up here, we're actually updating that state. So let's go down in our handle submit. I'm going to create here another condition. I'm actually going to create an if statement that is going to look for the current index of each item within here. We're not creating arrays. This means we are now adding items to an array. This means that each item will have a unique index. Now, before I even do this, let me just comment this out. I also want to go down here and replace the key now with the index right here, because this index is unique for each item. And you can also see that it's still adding because we have something in our input fields. So let's also take care of when we're handling our submit right after the event was initiated. It should also, and the items were added, it should also clear these two fields. Basically, I'm going to use now our set new item, and I'm going to set it to an empty string. And I'm going to do the same thing for set new quantity. So set new quantity, I'm going to set this also to an empty string. So now when we're going to update this state, it's also going to clear these two fields. So let's update the state. Again, we're going to start here with an if statement, and we also need a new state. We're going to need a state. Whoops, I have here a empty array, and also here an empty array. And this should be actually empty strings. Sorry about that. Let's copy and pasting. And let's comment you out. Let's hit save again. It's going to add another item. So let's move on to here to our condition. So I said that we're going to copy and paste this new quantity and replace it with current index. And let's also set the current index by changing this to current and index. But instead of having here an empty string, I'm going to assign this to a -1, to a value of -1. Now in our if statement, in our handle submit down here, we're going to search for this current index. And if this current index is greater or equal to 0, then we're going to create here first of all a const of update item. And we're going to assign this, just again, update item. We're going to assign this to the items, but by using the spread operator. So items, and it's going to update my items. Now let's use our update items, and from them we're going to select the current index, and we're going to assign this to item, just like we did down here. So I'm going to copy this and replace it here. Basically, it's going to update that item from our state here that we're focusing on, or that the index is focused on. And then it's going to set items to the updated items, okay? And also it's going to set the current index to -1. Now this is one condition. We're not done yet. If this is not true, then else we're going to move everything that is in here up here, and else is going to add a new item. So first is going to check if that item exists. If it doesn't exist, that it means it cannot be updated, so it's going to add a new item. Okay, now before we submit something, we also need the value of the input fields. So let's go down to our input fields, and right after ref, we're going to set the value of the first input field to item to new item, and the second one, the value will be new quantity, of course. So new quantity. Now that we have our values, we also need to be able to update our values. This is going to be done by the onChange event. So onChange, and this will handle item change. And the next one will be onChange handle quantity change. So let's copy and paste this in here and replace it with quantity change. Now we need these two event handlers. So we're going to copy the item handle item change. Let's go up before our handle submit. I'm going to create a function that is going to handle item change. I'm going to pass in the event, and this is going to now set new item to the event dot target and dot value. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing also for handle quantity change. Quantity, actually I should select both of them. So go over item, select both items and type in quantity. There we go. Now let's try this again. Apples and 10, hit save, and there we go. Now I want to add to this a parenthesis so we can recognize. Also, you can see that the values will emptied. So let's go down, down, down in our list. You know what? I'm going to make this a bit smaller, and I think I'm zoomed. There we go. That's much better. So let's go down to our list, and right where we have our item quantity, we're going to wrap this into a parenthesis. It's going to be more obvious. So 10 apples we have right now. Okay, we added a new item. Next up, let's also delete an item. So right after our handle submit, I'm going to create here a new function. I'm going to call it function and handle delete. Now this is going to take in as an argument the index. And first, I just don't want to just delete items. First, I'm going to window.confirm. So I need some kind of validation here that you really want to delete the item and question mark. Now, if you click on yes, see later on, I'm going to use here logical operator. Then we're going to set new items to item, because we're going to loop over our items state once again, but this time we're going to use a filter method on it. And we're going to return here in a arrow function, in a callback function, the item and the index. Just going to use I this time, which is not, you know what, I'm going to type in index, but please don't confuse it with the under index. These are the new indexes. So index that is not, why am I missing here an N? That is not equal to the index selected. So index again. Okay, let's hit save. And now we can try and delete this little fellow right here after we assign our handle delete to the button. So let's go down to the button. We have here our delete button, which just has an X in here. Now let's add a on click event to it. On click, we're going to assign this to a callback function. And this is now going to handle the delete, but it needs, don't forget, it needs the index. So the index that we got from our items right here, we're going to use in this handle delete. So it's going to target the exact item that we're clicking on. For this, I'm going to add another one. Let's say gold coins. Let's say we have 20 of them. Hit save. We have 2 items now. Now let's delete our gold coins. So I'm going to click on delete. This is going to prompt me with our message right here, delete this item. If I click on cancel, then nothing will happen. But if I click on OK, then whoops, that just deleted both items. Wait a second. Should it let this at I. So let's just delete this and delete this because it's now looking for the same index. So let's add again apples and 10, save, and gold coins and 20, enter. Now let's try this again. Let's delete our gold coins, hit OK, and there we go. Only the gold coins were deleted. I accidentally targeted the say I. So this is the index, but it's not this index, which is basically just a placeholder for the value that is going to be passed in here. And in our case, it's all called index. So naming conventions are important. Toasty! Okay, and we can also delete our apples now, and boom, they're all gone. Now, how about editing? So next up, let's go ahead and create a function that is going to edit the item. So for this, I'm going to add our apples back. Let's say 10 again. And let's also add gold coins. Let's add 20 of them. And yes, I clicked in 21 because I want to edit this to 20. So right after our function of handle delete, we're going to create another one function. This is going to be called handle edit. Again, this is going to take in the index. And now we need to set the current index and update the input fields with the item's value. So we're going to set current index to the index. Again, this is the index that is going to be passed down from this function. This function now does not have a external scope. So everything that is in this function will have as values only the values that are passed in through this index. Then I'm going to destructure here using const and curly brackets the object of items, and I'm going to use item and quantity, and I'm going to assign this to the items, and wait, I have an M too many in there, and the index. Next, let's use our set new item and set new quantity. Set new item, and it's going to take in the item, and then set new quantity, which is going to take in the quantity that is going to be passed in here as a new value. Now, all we need to do now is add our handle edit down here to this button, which is going to then on click. Again, we're going to pass in here a callback function as an error function. Is going to handle edit and is going to take in, you guessed it, the index again. Now let's take care of this save button, because as I said, I want to be able to add an item and then the text should be add. So let's go to our button of save right here. We're going to pass it into curly brackets and I'm going to turn it into a string. And now we're going to look for the quantity, and now I'm going to look for the current index, because this is the only thing that is constantly changing. And if this is greater than 0, that means that we have a item in there, so save button should appear, and else, well, the add text should appear. So as soon as I hit save, you'll see this changing to add. Why is this? Because if I want to edit, I'll go with coins, the quantity of them. 2, let's click on edit, 20, then the save button will appear. So I'm going to save this. This is going to change. Now again, if I want to edit the C here to a lowercase c and hit enter, then also this is going to change. Okay, so we are able to add items. Let's add silver coins and let's add 31. Let's add them. Now we can delete our apples. We don't need apples as long as we have gold coins and silver coins. And actually we have 35 silver coins. So let's edit the 31 to 35. And there we go. So hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any kind of questions or suggestions for future videos, then please leave them in the comment section below. Also, if you're not subscribed, it's a great time doing so. I am constantly posting new updates on projects, new projects, everything that is new in the web development world. You will get it first right here, also on my podcast. Check out my blog, check out everything that I'm associated with. Check out my courses. I have great courses on React, on JavaScript, on web development, all around, basically HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, Visual Studio Code, everything. So hope you enjoyed this project and catch you next time. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.